The White House says plans are now underway for direct talks between Russian President Vladimir Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Beyond that, the White House declining to share any more details about a potential bilateral meeting. And notably, nor the Kremlin nor Russian officials have publicly said that they've actually agreed to meet with Zelensky. Let's get right to the White House and CNN's Kristen Holmes. And Kristen, you directly asked Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt during the press briefing today about this. What did she say?
Yeah, Boris, I mean, there's still a lot of questions. Remember when we went into the meeting yesterday, when we were covering from every angle, we were told by European leaders and by President Trump that the goal was this trilateral meeting. That was what they wanted at the end of these negotiations. And instead, they came out saying there was going to be this bilateral meeting. And I asked Karoline a specific question or specific questions about where this idea came from and whether or not Putin had agreed. Take a listen. Just a clarification on something you said earlier about Putin agreeing to the meeting. The Kremlin seemed to indicate that Putin did not firmly agree to a bilateral. Did he agree to have a sit down with just Zelensky on the phone?
I can assure you that the United States government and the Trump administration is working with both Russia and Ukraine to make that bilateral happen as we speak.
Now, Boris, you might notice that that was not a direct answer on her part, but shortly afterwards, another reporter followed up on my question and asked specifically, we understand that you're working with both governments, but has Putin agreed? And Karoline Leavitt said he has, which is certainly news because, as you said, the Kremlin was being very iffy on whether or not he would actually do this.
As President Trump met with Ukrainian President Zelensky and European leaders at the White House on Monday, Russia launched its largest aerial attack on Ukraine since the end of July. The Ukrainian Air Force said Moscow launched 270 drones and 10 missiles overnight. 8 people were killed, 54 were wounded across the country. Meantime, Ukraine says it struck 2 Russian ammunition depots in the occupied Luhansk region. Ukraine's security service says it used long-range drones to hit the ammunition warehouses on an important railway line used to supply ammunition from Russia to the front line. With us now to talk about these latest developments is Democratic Congressman Adam Smith of Washington State. He's the ranking member on the Armed Services Committee. Congressman, thank you so much for being with us. You spoke before yesterday's meeting at the White House with Zelensky and all these European leaders about how you wanted the president to show strong support for Ukraine. We heard European leaders applauding Trump's offer to back security guarantees against any future Russian aggression. What else do you think President Trump needs to do, in your eyes, to show support for Ukraine?
Certainly. Well, the meeting yesterday could have been worse. It was kind of neutral. It wasn't the disaster that the meeting with Putin was. But look, President Trump can just clearly state Ukraine is a sovereign democratic nation, and we are going to work with our partners and allies to preserve that. We will arm and equip them so that they can push back against Russia. He can make that 100% clear that Russia's war on Ukraine was wrong and was caused by Putin and Russia, period, full stop. And then second, he can actually carry through on some of the threats around sanctions, to put the pressure on Russia and Putin. And that's the whole problem with the way Trump has approached this. He's put all the pressure on Zelensky and Ukraine and taken the pressure off of Putin. And it was, I think, about a month ago that Trump expressed the surprise that, well, gosh, it looks like Putin might not really want peace. No, he doesn't want peace. He wants Ukraine. He will only choose peace if we can make it clear that he won't get Ukraine. And President Trump and his administration have been far from clear that they understand that central point. Now, yesterday was better. I had the conversation, talked about security guarantees for Ukraine, but the Trump administration has a long way to go in terms of being strong and clear about resisting Putin's effort to take over Ukraine.
I want to zero in on something you said, Congressman, because I hear just skepticism, outright skepticism, that Putin actually wants peace. So do you think that this is all just a ruse to gain more time?
Absolutely. I mean, look, Putin was happy that Trump came into the White House, and he saw it as an opportunity based on a number of things that Trump has said before. And look, the reasons behind why Trump takes the positions that he's taken are really complicated. It goes back to the 2016 effort, of Russia to interfere in the election and all of that. But what Putin saw was someone who wasn't going to stand up to him and give him that opening, and also undermining the coalition. Ukraine's bravery and courage and tenacity has been a huge part of why they've survived, but also the 53-nation coalition that was put together to help them defend themselves has been a huge part of it. And the degree to which Putin could undermine that coalition and Trump's criticisms of our European allies, his ambivalence about NATO, that's all music to Putin's ears because it undermines the ability of Ukraine to defend itself. So I think that's where Putin is going. Look, the formulation has been simple from the start. Force Putin to the table by making it clear that he's not going to be able to take Ukraine. That's what gets him to choose peace. And that's where we got to go, and what I don't think the Trump administration has done a good enough job of.
So you think that any sort of peace deal that's formulated with security guarantees, the U.S., not with troops on the ground, but in other methods, backing perhaps a UK, French, and other European allies, a force on the ground there, a so-called reassurance force, and also some kind of Article 5-like agreement that there would be a response with force if Russia were to restart aggression after some kind of peace deal. You think that's all just bunk?
I don't fully understand what you mean by that, but no, I don't.
Just
look,
that,
I don't
Congressman,
think
to clarify.
is necessary.
Well, go ahead. You don't think that those sort of details are necessary?
Oh, they're important, but what really has been helpful to Ukraine is the fact that we are going to arm them, train them, and support them. I don't think it's necessary to have NATO troops on the ground in Ukraine. I don't think it's necessary for Ukraine to join NATO. I know that's a controversial position, but if we give them the level of support that we've given them over the course of the last, 3+ years, and if our European partners and allies do, economic and military, if we show them that we're going to give them that level of support and we're not walking away from it, as Trump has threatened to do in the past, that's what's important. The details I will leave to people more knowledgeable than me. Maybe a domestic force is part of it. Whatever it is, it has to make Ukraine a hard enough target that Putin doesn't think that he can take it. And there's a bunch of different ways to do that, but we have to focus on that instead of focusing, as Trump has, on various different arguments for why the war is really Ukraine's fault. And while Putin has legitimate security interests, he has no legitimate security interests. Ukraine does not threaten Russia. It is the other way around. And we have to make that clear. So the details can be worked out. But no, that's not bunk. That's an important part of the conversation.
Well, the question I was getting at is if it's clear to you and to other observers that have raised similar points that Vladimir Putin is not serious about this and that this is just kind of a distraction to further kick the can down the road, potentially to sign some agreement, but then to restart fighting at a later date, then why are European leaders not saying that directly to President Trump? Why are they sort of backing what they see as a potential path to peace right now?
Yeah, well, I think they have said that to President Trump. I mean, part of it is just getting Trump back in the boat, if you will. Okay. I mean, there's a lot of details to be worked out, but the European leaders are like, let's at least get to a better place than where we were in February. When it seemed like Trump was just going to outright abandon Ukraine. So walk before you run, get him back into the concept and then work out the details. And look, I've spoken with leaders in Eastern Europe in particular who want far more than what I just said. I mean, they want us to go in and fight and retake all of Ukrainian territory. So there are differences of opinion within Europe. But the one thing we ought to be able to agree on: protect a sovereign democratic Ukraine, give them the means to defend themselves and continue to exist as a country. A lot of different details there, but remember where Trump was when he came in was, we're going to walk away from Ukraine, not our problem. Putin's got a legitimate claim. Zelensky really started the war. So just getting him off of that was a necessary step to have any hope of preserving Ukraine and getting to peace.
Congressman Adam Smith, very much appreciate you joining us and the conversation.
Great. Thanks for the chance.